Hey everybody, I have another story I want to share with you. This one, like the other one I read you, is about worms because it starts with the letter W. Remember, W says w, w, w. Here's our story. It's called Why Worms. Do you see those W's? Why worms? Andrew had a drawing book, a big, fat, enormous drawing book. It had lots of please fill me up pages. So Andrew drew on him with his fat red crayon. He drew cars and cats and cowboys. He drew kings and queens and astronauts. He drew horses, hills, and helicopters. But most of all, he drew worms. Lovely, wriggly worms. Why worms? Asked his mom. Because I like them, said Andrew, and they're easy. So Andrew drew worms, long, lean, curling ones that wound all over the page. He drew tiny, squished up ones in the corners. He drew worms on their backs, on their fronts, and upside down. There were worms so thin they tangled up like string, and worms so fat they filled a whole page with one wriggle. Andrew drew worms in cars, under cats, and in cowboy hats. He drew worms that rode horses, crawled over and waved out of helicopters. He drew and drew until no worms left, and the big, fat, enormous drawing book was full. Andrew looked around for somewhere else to draw, but there was only the wall, the beautiful, big bedroom wall. Uh-oh. So he drew an especially big, happy worm. It weaved its way along by Andrew's bed and peeped around the corner to smile over his pillow. Come and see my happy worm, shouted Andrew. But his mom didn't like the worm at all. In fact, she was very angry. She made him wash the worm away with a wet cloth. So Andrew was sad, and he drew sad worms on the pillowcases. Oh, Andrew. His mom didn't like the sad worms either. She took away his crayon and his pillowcase to wash. Time for bed, she said. So Andrew had to dream of worms instead. The next day, Andrew wanted to draw again. We're going shopping first, said his mom. So Andrew's mom bought him a new, big, fat, enormous drawing book with even more pages and an especially blue crayon. But Andrew was fed up with worms now, so he drew spiders instead. Andrew, so fun. I want to show you how you can draw some worms, and then I have another activity where you can actually make your own pretend worm and do some fun stuff with that. So I have a giant piece of paper here, and you can draw worms just like Andrew did. I'm going to make a big worm, so I'm going to start over here. I'm just going to make a long squiggly line. Now I need to make his head, so I'm going to go around, and then I'm going to come back and follow the same line I made before, but I'm going to leave space the whole time. And then I'm going to come back around that side. There's my worm. Now, we learned in the other story that worms don't have eyes, right? But I like to give these ones eyes because they look cute. So you can make your worms realistic, or you can make them silly. You can do really skinny worms, There we go. Just like Andrew did, you can do all sorts of fun stuff. Another thing that's really great to do, with permission from mom and dad, is to try drawing on a mirror or on a window. You can use just a washable marker like this and then wash them off with just a squirt of water, and that's a lot of fun. Let me show you, last worm project that you can do is actually making your own worm. You can ask mom and dad for a piece of tin foil. Like this, you can get any size you want. The bigger your foil, the bigger your worm's gonna be. And then you're gonna take your foil, I'm gonna do that so you can see my head, and you're just gonna kind of crumple it into a long line. This is gonna be your worm's body. Look at that. Now, the foil's fun because you can bend it and make your worm take different shapes, and it stays that way. Doesn't really look much like a worm. So if you have masking tape at home, this is awesome for covering the outside of your worm. And this tape is fun because you can even stretch it, pinch it, and tear it, and then wrap. And this takes patience because you got to do a lot of them. I'm just going to twist it and wrap it around. And then I do that again and again and again until my worm is completely covered up. So there you go. You can see what's starting to happen. I could even put a face on him if I wanted to. Once you cover the whole body, they look pretty realistic, and it's kind of fun. So if you like doing worm projects, you can, let's see, there we go. I have a paper here about my worm. So it says, my worm is named, ooh, and look what I did. I can practice down, up, and you guys have done, we've done O and R and M. You could practice writing all those. Now I have the word worm. My worm is named, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that. My worm is, let's see, I'm gonna trace down, up, down, up. Now I'm gonna measure my worm. My worm is, so you can get a ruler. Maybe, I wonder if you could make a worm that's 19 inches, because that's our number this week. My worm is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches long. So I can make my 8. And last question, my worm likes to eat what? Now, in the other story, we learned that real worms eat rotting leaves, right? And other things like that. So you can be realistic with your answer, or if you want to, you can be silly. Say something like pizza or spaghetti. So that is your worm project. I hope you have fun. Bye.